Hello.
Hello.
Ryan.
Is this the place to learn about competitive debating? Because I want to learn how you do it.
You and Neil are competing for oldest debater in the room.
I don't think so, mate. I actually think a lot of folks here are older than all of us, including Ethan. Ethan's older than me. Also, Ethan and Laura just letting you... Oh, gosh, why are there so many people? They're supposed to be in my squads. Oh, I feel very, very insulted. Never mind. I apologise for running a terrible squad. I think Geneva's presence definitely ups the quality, but anyway, I am not a fan of providing high-quality services.
Ryan, are you a beginner?
Ryan Wong's mascot is what he's saying.
Oh.
What? First you change your hairstyle, and now you change your intellectual level to like...
Okay, I'm the big hair.
Okay, never mind. I don't want to insult Jet, but anyway. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
John, are you back in Australia?
I am not back in Australia. I am stuck in glorious Singapore. What about you?
I'm stuck in glorious Oxford.
Much more
Oh, really?
glorious.
I would have thought you were in Australia.
I would have too, but I made the early decision not to, and then there was really...
Well, it would be more
Australia,
fun
it's
to...
so cold.
Was it a good decision or a bad decision?
It was a good decision until it started raining, so
Oh, okay.
No, I think England going into summer is better than Australia going into winter.
I made the bad decision of
Having
coming here
cold
because time zones just stuck here, and I have no friends unless I want to wake up at like 7 or 8 in the morning.
That's dire.
Yeah.
So Mika's also going to join, but is running late. Jasper's going to join. Zeus is joining.
Are you sure?
Zeus doesn't stop messaging me.
Hi, Alex.
Hello.
Zeus said he was going to join my session and then he quit. So,
He
I
was
guess...
there. He was there. He just wasn't participating, to be fair.
Wait, Zeus was there?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was
God.
on the call.
Oh, God. I guess Zeus is...
You just didn't realise. You were chatting shit about him the whole time, and he was just listening to you.
That's so mean, but fair. I wasn't chatting shit. I was just noting the fact that he could judge. Like, Zeus is the best judge, you know? Only second to Hades, and also beside... anyway.
Anyway.
How have you been, Brian?
I've been well. I've been interviewing people like Jack Solomon for my podcast.
That's categorically untrue. I set my standards significantly higher.
Indeed. I thought your podcast episode was pretty dope, though. I was very captivated by this episode.
Modelling myself off OTR.
You definitely did not hold back, and there were no bars in your conversation. So.
What's your podcast?
You know. It was a prison.
It was an arresting conversation.
A bars joke.
It would be
No arresting conversation. Good one.
Well, that's a very egregious charge. Is John joining?
Is who joining?
John Yap.
John Yap is not joining. He has law mods in 3 days.
That is exactly why you should join, you know. 3 days before I did my prelims, I was in Durham. Now, firstly, it was amazing because I was in Durham. Secondly, it was also amazing because I was doing debating. But I think the first was more impressive than the second.
Which Durham tournament was during prelims?
Durham 2016.
What did we go to? Was that IV or open?
It was open. It was week 8 of Trinity, and I was in Durham. It was very good fun. It was freezing. That's when I realised that British summers aren't really summers. It's all a bloody lie-off.
It's all propaganda. That's why they call it British summertime instead of like daylight savings time.
Hi, Jack. Hey, Jack, salam.
Hello.
Yes,
Who's
I'm talking, and a friend of mine, he said he sent you a message. He wanted to join, but she said you didn't reply.
Oh, I haven't got it. Is it in message request? Did she add me on Facebook?
I don't know. He said he have asked you, but you didn't reply. His name is Bernard. Bernard.
No, I don't think I've got it.
Oh.
Do you want to just send her the link and she can join?
Okay. So I just copy your link to him.
Yeah, if she adds me on Facebook, I can message her next time, but I don't think I've got it.
Okay. I will tell him. But this time, let me just give him the link.
Are we expecting anyone else, Jack?
Maker, but he's going to be late. So I think if you want to kick things off, that is good to go.
Okay, Ethan, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Ethan. Me and Laura are going to be coaching you this week. I don't know how many of you were here last term in the beginner's squad, but I recognise some of you. So apologies if we say things that you already heard last term, but hopefully everyone will be able to follow just the coaching that we're given. So what I want to talk about this week is quite a sort of general overview of not just what different positions in the debate are supposed to be doing, but also what the sort of general thing you're trying to do is in the debate and how you win debates. So essentially all speakers are trying to do two basic things. The first thing is to essentially prove that a point is true. And the second thing they're doing is proving that this point wins the debate for them. That's the most important thing that judges should consider when they're judging the debate. Now, the rules of BP are such that different speakers have to do this in different ways. But the basic things you have to do, proving a point and proving that these points win the debate. So how do you do those two things? Well, the first one, proving a point, I mean, sort of self-explanatory. Like, I assume you write essays and you have a general idea of what it is you're doing. But in debating, I think just some general pointers if you're struggling to think of how it is that you prove a certain thing. It's often convenient to think of a certain fact about the motion, something you're discussing. If it's like this house would ban private schools, for example, then a certain fact about what private schools are, that, paying money gives you access to their educational resources, and then you can start with this fact and say that maybe that leads to people who aren't the most naturally talented getting in certain positions or something. So often it helps to start with a certain fact, either about like something in the motion or the kind of place which you think the motion applies to. So a certain fact about that, and like what are the implications of that? And that's quite a helpful way to think about just the start of your analysis, essentially going step by step and making sure each step that you make is sort of entailed by some basic fact or by something you've already said. So basically don't just say anything that's not supported. Don't leave us thinking, why is this true? Okay, secondly, proving these points win the debate. This is the more complicated thing that a lot of people who are new to debating find more difficult to do. So once you've proven this point, like presumably a lot of teams are going to prove things in the debate that won't be completely rebutted. And in this case, the way one team beats another team is by giving good reasons as to why their points are more important. So there's two sort of ways in which you sort of do this in your speech. The first is at the start, which generally is sort of called framing. That is, you say, what is so problematic about the situation that we're discussing? Why is a motion being considered on this issue? What's going wrong? And so you talk about who's being affected and how they're being affected. And you can characterize who you think, what people say the most important actors are in this debate. So the people that would be affected the most, either adversely or negative or positively in the debate. And then at the end of the speech, once you've proven your point, you can then sort of relate this back to maybe what you said at the start, or if you haven't said at the start, just say, so the people impacted by the points we've given to you are this group, and this group is the most important for a certain reason. Maybe because they're like the largest number of people, maybe because they're particularly vulnerable people, and so the impact that happens to them makes the most difference in the debate. And so there's other stuff you can do, but just in terms of basic things about winning the debate, think at the start of your speech, frame the problem, and think who are the most important people in the debate. And then at the end of the speech, think, okay, so I proved a certain point to you. Now, why are these people? Why are the people that I proved the point about the most important people in the debate? So think how numerous they are, maybe, or how severely they are affected. And often this is a sort of discussion about why they're the most severely affected. Another thing you have to do is rebuttal. And rebuttal is just either saying why the opposition has failed to prove a point, or why the opposition has failed to prove that this point actually matters in the debate. So those are the two basic things that you should be doing: proving a point and proving why the points win the debate. Okay.
So then the third thing that you need to do for VP is do that within the structure of your role. And this is where it gets a little bit VP-ish and quite annoying, because you're not going to get many, you're not going to win a debate unless you've fulfilled your role, clearly. Some roles are harder than others, and so we thought we'd go through sort of the three roles that are the weirdest. So that's the Prime Minister, the first speaker, the extension speaker, so the third speaker on each side, and the whips, so the last speaker on each side. So if we talk about the Prime Minister first of all, the really important thing you need to do right at the start of your speech is define the motion. And this is literally defining what the words in the motion mean. So if your debate is "This House believes that the war on terror failed," you would need to tell us what the war on terror was, and how you're going to measure if something failed or didn't fail. The next thing you do after that, shouldn't take too long, should be fairly obvious, is give a mechanism or a model. This is how you implement this motion. So with the motion that I just said, "This House believes that," you probably don't need to give one, because you don't actually have to implement it as a government. But if you had, for example, "This House would" motion, you need to tell us how you're going to do this in real life. So if it's "This House would ban private schools," what would you do with existing private schools? Where would the students go? Would you use them for something else? It's tempting in this to give something quite unreasonable, so excuse the debate almost entirely to your side, and so there's nothing to argue from the opposition. Don't do that. You won't get any points for it. It just makes the debate a bit pointless. So give a fairly balanced definition and model or mechanism, but it does give you the ability to frame the debate as you wish. Other than that, obviously you need to give your main arguments and a lot of pre-rebuttal to try and preempt any rebuttal to your points and protect them against future attack. I hope that's clear. Ethan's going to tell you about extension speakers.
Yeah, so just in case anyone doesn't know how BP debates work, sorry if you already know this, but just to be clear. So you have 4 teams in the debate. Each team has 2 people, and the way it works is the first speaker, Prime Minister, is on a team, and then the second speaker, Leader of the Opposition, is on the separate team, and that's opening government and opening opposition. And then after the first government speaker and the first opposition speaker has made their speech, then the second speaker on the government opposition side of the debate speaks, and they're the second team in opening government. So it's opening government and then opening opposition are the 2 teams that speak first. So it goes government, opposition. And then the same happens with the next 2 teams, which are the second government team, which is closing government, and the second opposition, closing opposition. So it goes government, opposition, government, opposition, government, opposition, government, opposition. However, the government and opposition are divided into the first 2 speakers and the last 2 speakers, which are on separate teams. And what you're trying to do is win the debate for those team of 2 people rather than your side as the whole. So prove why you and your partner said the most important things that won the debate. So extension speakers are the first speakers for closing government and closing opposition. So the third speakers on each team, on each side of the debate. Okay, so what they have to do is bring new arguments that are distinct from what their opening team has brought. So what do we mean by new arguments? So basically new reasons why something is true, why a point stands. Now, the point or the impact that you're trying to prove can, in your closing team, in your extension speaker, be exactly the same impact as your opening team. However, you can give better or at least different reasons why that point is true. So we wouldn't say that you're derivative or making no new contributions today just because you're talking about the same thing, but the reasons why you say that thing is true have to be different. Alternatively, you can just go for a different impact entirely and give reasons about that, and you're kind of less likely to be derivative if you're doing that, but you're not necessarily derivative just because you're talking about the same sort of impacts. If you are talking about different impacts, then it's probably a good idea to explain why you think the impacts that you prove are more important than your opening team. So yeah, that's essentially what extensions are doing. You're proving a point that, whilst the point itself isn't necessarily new, the way you get to that point is different. So I hope that's clear.
Okay, lastly is the whip speaker. So that's the last speaker to go on each side. This is probably the most complicated. The key point is you're not allowed to bring in any new material. So what that means in practice is if you and your partner come up with 5 points during prep time, you can't take 2 of those points and add them into your speech. Your most important points need to come up in your extension speaker, and you can't add in new points or new arguments for those points. They will have to come out in the extension speaker before you. What you can do, however, is give reasons why your partner's points are true, in order to rebuild your partner's points or rebut other people's points. So broadly, the 3 things you need to do are like anyone in the debate, but more explicitly, you need to rebut the other teams. You need to rebuild your partner's points. And what that means is your partner will have said their extension and then come under a lot of attack from the other side. And you then need to rebuild your partner's points and tell the judge why your partner's points still stand, despite any attack that might have been thrown at them. And then finally, you need to tell us why your partner's points are more important than anyone else's points in the room. What this can look like is a bit like what Ethan said at the start, is by telling us, firstly, why their points are more true. So why it's more likely that they're things that they say will happen, or why their analysis is better. And secondly, why they're more important than anyone else's. So do they affect more people? Do they affect more vulnerable people? Or do they affect people in a more significant way? It's good to do this explicitly. So you can rebut other people's points just by virtue of their own points, and you can also compare them to your own partner's points. So in order not to waste time, it's advisable to do them all in one, right? So you're comparing your partner's points to someone else and telling us why their points don't stand, and even if they did, why your partner's points are better. So I hope that's clear. That is quite tricky. Do you have any questions about any of the stuff we've said?
I add one more thing on, which is it might be useful in prep time if you are in closing half to prep both a vertical and a horizontal extension. And what I mean by that is have one kind of extension or like an additional argument ready to go that is an entirely new argument or an entirely new part of the debate, and have one ready to go that is perhaps like explaining why one of opening's argument is significant in the debate, or explaining why the mechanism that opening relies on actually exists. So if opening says this will lead to X outcome, your extension could just be why we get to X outcome if opening hasn't done that. And the reason that's quite useful is it means that if that they take the horizontal angle and do quite a good job on that analysis, you've got it covered. And if they do a bad job on that, you've got the additional argument as well to go with.